All right, well, let's get started. Just turned 4:30. So everyone, welcome, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. It's very great to have everyone join. And we have a fantastic panel ahead of us today to chat about ESG investing and particularly how we can inform family offices. And so what I thought we'd do is first of all, thank the panel for putting some time aside, but also, as you can see here, with a great selection of people with great backgrounds, everything from family offices, large family offices, new family offices, as well as folks who represent on the LP side. So what I thought would be helpful is first of all to thank the sponsors too, who have done a great job in helping us put this together. First off, First Republic. So First Republic, as many all know, is a great bank, a business bank, and do investing bank, and also personal wealth management. So we're great to have them as one of our participating sponsors, and also Runway. Runway is, those may know, is based in San Francisco. It's a co-working space. And right now they're very well known for working with corporate innovation as much as helping early stage companies be successful as well. So thanks to our sponsors. What I thought we would first off do is do some introductions. Just go around and maybe start maybe with Sophie, and then Kunal, and then Sion, and then after that, then we'll go into the introduction also from Caroline from First Republic. So why don't we start off? Sophie, do you mind giving your background?
Sure. So I'm Sophie Duray. I'm Venture Program Manager at Tamar Capital. Tamar Capital is a single family office with offices in the Middle East, in Europe, and in San Francisco. And I'm in charge of their venture capital strategy with an expertise in impact investing.
Great. Kunal, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kunal Doshi. I'm an investor at Capricorn Investment Group. Capricorn Investment Group manages about $6 billion in assets under management, mostly focused around impact. I spent 10 years of my life on Wall Street and investing specifically within impact investments, focused on venture and growth.
Great. And Sayon?
Hi, I'm Sayon Kang. I'm a partner with Greenspring Associates. We manage about $12 billion across venture capital. We invest in both companies as well as commit about half the capital to funds. And on the fund side, we commit from anywhere from the seed stage to venture growth funds. And we do have a program exclusively dedicated to impact investing.
Great. And briefly, on Level Ventures, we are a fund that helps emerging managers basically grow and accelerate their career through capital and knowledge. But let's go to the agenda, if you wouldn't mind looking at the agenda slide. So what we have ahead of us in the next hour. So, well, first of all, have Caroline's going to give a brief introduction to First Republic. Then we have a poll, and the idea of the poll is for you guys in the audience to answer some questions, and then the poll will get back near the end of the actual discussion here, and then we'll review what people's results were live during the course of the panel. And then after the poll is launched, we're going to have 3 questions. And the questions are diving deeper into some of the topics we think could be interesting to everyone. And then we'll get the poll back and then some time for Q&A. And I know in the meantime, if you do want to involve in chat, there's great opportunities to jump in and ask for chat. There's also Q&A, which we have the folks, a guy called Manny here is doing a great job in collating all the questions you may have to answer at the end. So with further ado, why don't Caroline, you just briefly give your introduction, and then and also there's the whole purpose here, First Republic, is to tee up to give us some understanding of what is the environment like, and then once the environment has been set, the stage has been set, then we'll dive into these 3 questions. So Caroline, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for having us. Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline Hale. Over the last 10 years, I've been running operations, investor relations, and fundraising for 3 different venture funds. I joined First Republic just this May during COVID to help build out our emerging manager platform, which we call Ascent. It's specifically focused around fundraising for emerging managers, so connecting GPs and LPs. And today I'm here to tell you a little bit about what we're seeing and hearing from our family office and VC clients around social and impact investing strategies. Next slide, Manny. Thanks. We've been seeing a significant growing interest on impact or ESG investing amongst our client base. Younger generations, such as millennials or Gen Z, are more focused on sustainable products. So the shift to service the future consumer base will be centered around this. Since COVID began, which feels like 10 years ago, it's actually been only 9 months, there's been a growing interest for a greener future. And because of COVID, what impact is better defined, it's better defined today than it has been maybe 6 or 9 months ago. And with this shifting consumer behavior, we're seeing a lot of change in VC impact, both on the PE and VC side, significantly around first-time fund managers raising funds around impact investing. And we're seeing examples like 145 different VC firms have signed the venture capital pledge, which I'm sure many of you have heard around. And then many others are speaking and or we're reading about this daily on their specific strategies and goals. Can you go to the next slide? Thanks. These are 4 areas that we're specifically hearing about from our family office clients: energy and sustainability, agriculture and food, wellness and healthcare, and diversity and inclusion. Changes that I've been seeing, there's been an increase in traditional impact focused funds across the board, but we're also seeing an increase in non-traditional impact funds. So many are incorporating more and more focus in their due diligence, as well as existing generalist VC clients are also raising specialty funds to address the issue. What we're hearing a lot from LPs is more of a demand to get better acquainted to invest in funds or directly invest into companies with an impact strategy. We believe that this is much more secular trend rather than what's happening here and now. Because of that, we're seeing limited partners, both institutional and non-institutional, spend more and more time and having direct mandates into impact managers and companies. And my last slide. Thanks, Manny. So 2 client examples of ours, just briefly. Fifth Wall, Brendan Wallace is one of the GPs. He was impacted by Jeff Bezos' $10 million commitment to ESG, which has led him to invest a significant amount of his own money. They've also created a certified B Corp with their fund. And their plan is to have a zero carbon strategy by 2025. And then Alpaca Ventures, which you may have known as Coragen. And this summer, they committed 2.5 of their independent capital to back Black and Latina investing partners. So yeah, we're just seeing a diverse change and a lot of strategies from our family office and VC clients.
Well, very good. Thank you so much for that. That's good. Sets the stage. So let's, in the meantime, after this is everyone, the polling should now come available. So this is the poll. Can you guys, in your own time, take the poll, and then in the meantime, we'll crack on with the questions. So if you need it, you can just put for the poll. If it is in front of you, you can actually click it down, and once you finish responding to it. Okay, so let's first question. So let's start off. So ESG, it's quite a trendy term, and but I always remember it's philanthropic investing is what it used to be called. And I don't know if ESG is just another new version of philanthropic investing. Maybe something different. Maybe we could think further. Is it different than this time around? So maybe say on. Do you want to take a first crack at that and on the sort of difference between those two, and if there is a difference actually?
Sure. I think that it has evolved. I would say really the difference is in terms of, I think, expectations of performance and returns. So philanthropic investing, you know, we in venture, when you're talking just venture, we call it, some people call it venture philanthropy, I think was until pretty recently widely accepted as having non-financial performance benefit or non-financial benefits. And maybe not as kindly, you could call it concessionary capital. And I think that was people's expectation. And I think that the evolution that you've seen in terms of what I think people are calling ESG or maybe impact right now is that this whole movement won't get scale on the investment side unless the financial returns are on par, or if not, I mean, we've all seen the data, especially on the public side where the data is, we have more robust data there about the performance and financial returns being actually better. And in this last downturn in the public markets, both in public equities and fixed income, you saw all the ESG funds and ETFs greatly outperform. And, you could say it's because tech's done great and energy's done terribly. And clearly, these ETFs don't have a lot of energy exposure. But the point being, it's the first time that this has been tested in a downturn since I think ESG has really been a thing. And so we've seen it borne out in the public markets. And then I think that expectation has also moved over into on the private side that, again, what we're talking about is we want top quartile or even better than, top quartile returns. And that is our expectation for ESG or impact.
Maybe, Kunal, just riffing on that for a second. So therefore, I suppose everyone who's not in the top quartile, the other 75%, are they, is that I suppose, philanthropic investing then?
Yeah, no, and I think my answer to that is no. It just means that they're not good investors. I think the right way to think about it is philanthropic investing is important, and it should continue to happen because there's certain segments and there's certain focus areas that you're never going to be able to justify financial return on. And on the other hand, impact investment is, while the definition and the measurement impacts are continuing to be refined, impact measurement and impact investment is going to be a growing trend because, frankly speaking, you're laying bets on patient capital that's making long-term bets. In the long run, you are entitled to a return, which I would almost argue should beat market returns because you've taken a little bit more risk than generic investment.
And then when Capricorn first started out, what was the intention by design to have a ESG type focus, or is that something that evolved as the market evolved? What was the sort of that sort of evolutionary strategy around where we've got to today? Yeah,
I think for Capricorn, personally, Jeff was obviously excited about impact and sort of investing his capital to enhance market returns while investing in sustainability, right? So the idea was not just invest in impact, but invest in technologies and solutions that solve problems at a global scale. And that's fundamentally always been the approach. We invested in Tesla over 15 years ago. We've invested in SpaceX, Planet. I think for all of those, we've always taken a big problem, big solution approach. Investing has picked up in the past few years, and it's definitely trending a lot more. And they're going to be winners and losers if they don't think about, clearly defining what impact is and what return is. But for us, it's never been a trend. It's always been there since day one. It's in our DNA, and it's not just your North Star. It's in the fabric of everything we do from an investment perspective.
Great, thank you. Sophie, I'd be interested to understand. Tamar Capital, you've got a great background in this whole ESG space. So, what is the what can you share with family offices as they go about maybe getting into the space or expanding their portion of their fund to ESG? What are some of the lessons you've learned that you could share with others?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, the one thing that I've seen over my career is that you usually want to be perfect when you do things. And so getting into impact investing for Tamar Capital was something that was, as Kunal was mentioning, part of the DNA as well. And we wanted to make it as perfect as we could from the get-go. And just going over, all the deals that we see and trying to have that strategy in place, we've seen over time that it takes time to just have the right system in place. And so one lesson that we've learned is that as long as we are transparent with what we do, And we're able to back up what we say with evidence, which is data and metrics. We know we're not going to be perfect, but at least we're going to be improving as we go. And so for us as investors, what we've learned is impact investing is about improving over time. And so that's one lesson that I got, and something that I would share with people that want to get into the space is it's not going to be perfect at first, but you're gonna learn as we go.
Now, one of the challenges I always have looked into the space is getting the metric, how you define success. Can you walk us through a bit your journey, how you went through about defining what success means, both internally and something that you could measure internally on a quarter, maybe, or annual basis, and also externally as you started to measure success to, I suppose maybe Tamar doesn't need external capital, but I'm sure that if you ever did in your career need external capital, what you shared in terms of metrics to outside investors?
Well, the work around metrics has always been customized in my case. So whereas being with Tamar Capital or in the past, and that's kind of the expertise that I've developed over time, it's also because I'm focusing on VC and early stage investing. So obviously this would be different with public equity and even private equity, where you can find a little bit more standards. In the case of venture capital and in early stage investing, it's more of a ad hoc type of thing where you go into due diligence and you learn so much about the company that the metrics are going to kind of come up by themselves. But the one thing that we always start with is we have a very strong mission, and we mentioned the DNA part of it, but it really is what we stand for as a family office. And that's what we're going to be looking for in the companies that we invest in. And one of the metric is alignment. So we're trying to find the funders and the companies that are going to be aligned with who we are and what we want to achieve. And then depending on the industry and the sector, then we would look for benchmarks, which are often guidelines that you can find, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals are benchmarks for us, or it can be at the national level. Each country that we look into when we invest in companies, they have national priorities that we can use as baseline and benchmarks. And that helps us create metrics for each of the companies that we invest in.
Mm-hmm. And then how about finding talent for your own team? What's the sort of profile, if there is such things, I suppose you could find for someone who is a career path into your type of role in a family office? What would be that sort of makeup? Maybe people could learn from people who are a great fit, people who are not a good fit. Maybe you can help on both accounts.
Well, I guess my own background wasn't really a good fit at first. I mean, I did a master's degree in crisis management, in humanitarian crisis management. So I was looking to go in the field and helping on the humanitarian side. And then I kind of fell into the investment world just because my family is in wealth management. And so that's something that I finally accepted. And I was going to go and do the same thing as, my father wasn't planned. But anyway, with my background in kind of social issues and international challenges and the kind of heritage in finance, that made a good fit. But I don't think there's a right profile, to be honest. I've seen many people being very, very good at what they do in impact investing, mainly because they come from other spaces than, in the investment world, and they bring that perspective from the outside. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but
sure. If you have the ambition, you can make it happen. Sion, how about yourself? Now, it's very interesting. Greenspring has a reputation being a leading LP in the space, and if I stand corrected if I am wrong on this, but your sort of shift adding ESG is fairly recent in the, is that right, Sion, or did I misrepresent the long history of ESG investing?
So we have had an ESG focus in our process across all of our platform, and so I'll answer in two different ways. We had signed up to be a UN PRI signatory several years ago. A lot of our colleagues and partners have been very civic minded, et cetera, over the years. And then over the years, we have had some of our consultant partners, et cetera, asked us whether we would put an investment program together, knowing that, we are already looking at it from an operational due diligence perspective across our direct investments and fund investments. But again, for our sort of regular way via fund or investment programs, for lack of a better way to describe it. And then several years ago, about 4 years ago now, thought, we are starting to see a lot more awareness about these issues and these topics in ESG in venture now, where I think it had been, again, much longer on the public side. And then still continuing to have every once in a while some of our consultants and our partners say, would you put an impact strategy together? And then thought that the demand from clients, as well as the supply of venture managers in this space who are focused on areas that we could authentically call impact, was starting to line up. And so about not quite 4 years ago, we put an investment program together. So depending on how you look at it, we are almost 21 years old. So I guess it's sort of relatively recent versus the history of the firm, but it's not something we just did yesterday. And then again, we had brought that lens of ESG across the entire platform prior to actually having the fund vehicle.
And so therefore, if you are the approach you came from is that to an extent, there obviously are folks who are taking an active role personally, it sounds like, in those ESG space. But if you were an existing fund and we wanted to add a new ESG component, what are some of the, I suppose, lessons learned as you deal with adding a new area? Did you go out and actually find a new source of LPs, or did you just roll it into the existing fund and the existing LPs are happy for you to basically add that component? Do you have some advice on which of the ways others could consider going about this?
So our client base is largely institutional, just all different kinds of institutions. And I would say still, if I'm speaking in generalities here, a lot of the institutions that are focused on ESG or impact, at least of the private entities, they're doing a lot of their mission-driven investing on the program side. So even if, for example, they might be investing in a fund focused on workforce housing, they do it on the grant side or the program side, and the endowment investing is separate. I think that you're starting to see that change. Some very large foundations, named after robber barons, are starting to change that and take a piece of the endowment and then invest it into even though, again, it's supposed to be purely performance related, but again, to our earlier conversation, looking for impact fund and maybe direct or co-investments as well. So you're starting to see that change, but I would say the family office space, as well as different geographies, like I think, Western Europe and Australia have been much more woke about a lot of these topics than the US until pretty recently. And so, I'd say we saw more demand from the high net worth family office channel. And we do have those clients across our platform, but there was more of a preponderance of that group for the impact strategy.
Right. And so then did you end up raising therefore a sidecar fund? Is that the vehicle you used for the new pool of capital?
It's its own standalone vehicle. And apologies, I don't know if my compliance officer might yell at me because I'm not supposed to talk about specific funds because we're, but it's not a sidecar, it's its own program. Okay,
great. And then when you set up the metrics, and Sophie gave some interesting insights on how she looks at building metrics out to understand what success criteria is. I'd love to hear what yours are and how yours keep on evolving over time as well.
Yeah, so we do offer, or we do require impact reporting for all the managers as well as the directs that we are investing in out of that program. And we thought that it was important to use a third-party framework. I think that a lot of the other asset management firms or investment firms that have raised impact or ESG vehicles have come up with their own bespoke reporting, and we've heard a lot of criticism for them, for that. And so again, we thought it was important to have a third-party framework. Our program invests across certain thematic areas, and so listening to Sophie's comments about reporting, I think there are candidly, if we were a healthcare only fund or a sustainability only fund, we would probably have a different set of measures and a different reporting framework that we might settle on. But because we are investing across several different, largely unrelated thematic areas, two of which I just named, we settled on the B impact assessment, which is administered by B Labs. And so that questionnaire is something that our managers and then their portfolio companies answer annually, and then we roll that up and present that to our own investors.
That's very interesting. Does anyone else, Kunal, do you use the same thing, the B Corp? Is that something that you guys have come across before, or is it something that you do?
Yes.
Okay.
We're a B Corp as well.
Right. And Sophie, what made you decide not to use that? Just because it wasn't a good fit for what your fund thought of, or help us understand?
Yeah, I love the B Corp certification, and that's something that we often look for when we look at companies, because it helps us really find the impact. But for us, it was just a little bit too maybe rigorous, in the sense that as a family office, we have our own strategy and our own criteria. So it's difficult to kind of fit within all the boxes that they have. And it was just easier for us to have our own structure. But I do use, when I created the system for us, I do use very well-known databases of indicators, and again, like benchmarks that are very much known in the sector, so that we can compare with our other family offices, and we can exchange data as well. So it was just kind of mix and match and find what works for us, basically.
Right. And then, so in terms of the when you launched this fund, what was it like to find the right talent? Did you end up adding new investment managers, or was it basically the same core team now investing in a different area?
When you say it, sorry.
Well, is that for me, or is that for, I think it's for Sion, maybe. Yes,
that's right. Sion, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Do you mean, did we add to our team?
Correct.
Or, okay. We did not. We have a very large investment team, and we have set up different subcommittees for diligence based on different areas, based on geography or sector, and we set up an impact committee. And I was laughing to myself when you were talking about team earlier, because just as an indication of how much awareness there is around impact. I want to say we had 15 interns over the summer, and I'm not exaggerating. I think 13 of them wanted to be on the impact subcommittee.
So therefore, I'm hearing there's a lot of talent looking for great positions.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what would in terms of as someone develops who wants to be on the investing side in ESG, what are some of the areas that you find that the tools you use to keep current, to understand what's happening in the industry? Are there events that you go to? Are there weekly or daily blogs that you read? What keeps you current as a family office member on and working with also startups? What keeps you current in this space?
I mean, on my end, I've just subscribed to so many newsletters that just like every morning I read the headlines and I try and keep current in terms of trends. But generally speaking, I like to talk to my peers. That's where I learn the most, and just, people in the same space or even outside of the industry, and just kind of gathering information from there. And then talking to funders, my job is basically every day I'm talking to at least one funder, whereas, they're part of the portfolio or people that we're looking into, and they know best. They know from the ground, and usually I have like little MBAs when I do due diligence, talking to funders. It's like, I'm just learning a lot. So I would say that's where I get my trends.
Interesting. And how about you, Kunal? What's your source of knowledge in the space?
Yeah, I think Sophie mentioned it correctly. We're definitely parts of a lot of groups like UNPRI, the CREO Syndicate, World Economic Forum. And I think what you're going to find is, since this trend is growing and it's sort of, I would still say it's maturing, but it's not mature still. A majority of the news sort of travels from peers. In terms of who's setting up a fund and which LP is raising another climate fund, I think those are news you can get pretty much generically from Wall Street Journal or PVC or Strictly VC or any of the other sources.
Okay, so let's get the last question and then we'll get to the poll. So the last question is, if you are a startup or even a mid-sized company looking to raise capital from your own fund, what advice would you give to that person as the best way to engage with you, and what are some of the best practices that you've seen in this space? For example, is having some form of certification helpful during that Sippy mentioned? But maybe you can go through, maybe starting off, as you say, on what you look for as people come to you in terms of a good investment opportunity. What's the best practices?
I think we had, this question we had talked about was not 100% relevant to Greenspring, and so I thought Sophie and Kunal were going to respond to this one.
Okay,
sorry.
Definitely. So why don't Kunal, why didn't you jump in and take it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to startups and entrepreneurs and they're looking at capital raise, I think one of the key things to remember is that we're an impact investment fund. So the impact cannot be a sideline or a second thought or a fringe benefit. It has to be core to your mission. And we understand that you don't have the ability to measure it, but it should be a part of your vision and mission. The second thing, depending on the level you're coming in at, Capricorn invests in a number of different strategies, but the venture portfolio is heavily invested in technology impact. So from our perspective, we love to understand what is your technology differentiator. And then third, and I think this is relevant to most VCs and family offices, is what is really unique about what you're trying to position as, right? What's the problem?
Do we lose Kunal there?
Yeah, I think we did. Just
okay. Why don't
What's essentially you bridging the two? Sometimes it doesn't mean pitching.
Oh, Kunal, we lost you for a sec.
Okay, am I back now?
Yeah, you're back now. So
okay.
Maybe you can recap in one sentence what you were saying.
The recap in one sentence is, when you go to a pitch, try to find out what the investors are looking to get out of you, as opposed to just start the pitch meeting and then realize the 1 hour is already utilized. So use your efficiently in the pitch. Yeah,
so learn about your customer before you do your pitch. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's right. And then what are some of the specifically related to ESG? Is anything that you look at and look at opportunities in a different light because of them being an ESG opportunity, or is it purely, again, the financial and team, all the sort of usual components of a deal?
Yeah, I think, given how early we invest, Ian, it's not, we're obviously looking for a sense of a business model. We're looking for customer validation. We're looking at the entrepreneur and the founding team, given that we're betting on their vision and their hard work and sweat equity. we want to make sure that they're seasoned entrepreneurs. So I would say those are the top 3 criteria.
Mm-hmm. And then what are some of the best ways for people to actually engage with you? There you are. I know you're available on the website, so people can reach out to you. But what's the best, the most effective way that people can engage with you if they're a startup wanting to source an investment meeting with you?
Yeah, I mean, look, LinkedIn is pretty public for everyone, so it's easy to always connect and shoot people a note and share decks, and that's totally fine. I definitely review my LinkedIn. If things are of interest, I always invite them over for a call or a Zoom meeting. Right now, we used to do coffee chats, but that doesn't happen anymore.
Right. Now, how do you scale that? Because a lot of people may come to you, and you've got your time is I'm sure very pressed, but they'll be able to take meetings. Do you have what's your criteria? What do you look for in terms of the does it meet your investment criteria, or do you ask for traction, or what are some of the gating methods you look for early on?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the key things is this a sector that we're interested in? Is it a sector that we're long on? If we're not long on the sector, obviously as an impact investment firm, we would never invest in oil and gas, but that's an example of, are we long on the sector? If we're not going to look at it. The second thing we'd look at is what's the story and what's the traction they've gained so far. Sometimes it's seed and it's very new, but sometimes it's Series A and there's a syndicate. They've completed milestones, they've attracted customers. And I think that's all part of the storytelling in the pitch deck that we look at before it's interesting. And based on that, we'll invite them to come and pitch. And there's no guarantee we'll invest, but if you've hit those milestones in terms of here's what's unique, here are the milestones we achieved so far, and hopefully it's tuned to a sector we're interested in, there's a good chance we'll at least take a phone call, if not a meeting.
Right. And how about you, Sophie? What are any of the elements there that you dive into in more or less detail, or new approaches that you've found to be successful?
Yeah, well, I'm very aligned to what Kunal has said so far, but one thing that we look for when we filter deals, so meaning once they come into the pipeline basically, and before we go into due diligence, so kind of the first filter that we have, apart from looking at geography and making sure that it fits the sectors that we're investing in, we have our special criteria, what we call our special criteria, which is basically looking at the funders. Do we find that they're mission driven? And then looking at the impact as well, what they're trying to achieve. And we don't look at impact in terms of, is the company or the product going to generate a social or environmental impact, but really looking at, is the product going to change behavior? Is the product going to help build more community? Is the product going to bring more awareness around a specific issue? So we have our kind of lens on impact that we put from the get-go in the filtering process, which helps us basically, just looking through the decks that we receive, I can go very fast. And unfortunately for founders that, they take a lot of time creating these decks, but we do have, very automated process where it's just looking at it. If we find the special criteria, then we want to know more. And that's where we would offer a call or coffee if COVID was not there.
Right.
Yeah. And then in terms of how they can kind of attract our attention, usually we like when they know about us, which is not very easy because there's not much online. Family office, like most of the time, are pretty private. We tend to not be that private, but it's just, we like when they reach out to us, if they have looked into who we are as people. And the one thing that I know during a pitch is going to help me kind of move towards a yes rather than a no is if they are actually asking for help. So we as a family office are very much hands-on. So we like when they have specifically targeted us for technical assistance that we can provide. So either on the impact side, because they've seen my LinkedIn profile and they know that I can help on the impact measurement side, or one of the partners is very much into design thinking. So maybe that's something that they need. So if they can bring that to the table during the pitch, it's going to be very positive.
Right. And then what were some of the new ways you found in these times where it's hard to beat people or by chance, by random chance? What are some of the more effective ways you've seen people be able to engage with you?
We do a lot of demo days. We attend a lot of demo days, even if, like, you know, online. We've done a lot these past few months, and we try and be as available as possible after the demo days. So we leave our email address and stuff like that. So if the founders really want to reach us, it's often easy for them to find us this way. And then obviously the kind of referral system. So our founders in the portfolio might, you know, tell us about companies that they know, and then we have that kind of direct contact. But it's been more difficult for sure during COVID. Usually we try and attend a lot of events as well, where, you know, people can just come to us and talk to us.
Okay, good. Well, I think we're now at the stage where we can move to the poll responses. So let's pull them up and go one by one to understand here. So the first one is how much of your family offices is dedicated. It looks as though there is, you know, most people on the call, and it's nicely split between none, but intend to, and those 50% or more. So what do you know, Kunal? What do you think that we're representing a shift, and in the future ESG will just be a normal, it won't be called out as a category, it would simply be everyone will be doing it. At what point do you think we're going to get there?
I think in the long run, ideally, you know, impact investment is just investment, and it's not a separate category. And the reason I say that is because as we get better, as we get better and better at sort of making sure that taxes or negative externalities are challenged and people have to pay for it, you're going to find that the returns on impact investments will outdo all other returns. So regardless of your good intentions, it will be the sector you're interested in. If you already look at the 100 plus 50% bucket, it seems to be closer to 40%. And I would say, you know, 5 or 10 years ago, that would be less than 10%.
And when do you think it will no longer become a defined category? Are you talking like 3-4 years, or what's your timeline on when it'll be just basically investing?
Yeah, if I had the answer to that, it'll be a miracle, but I unfortunately don't. The answer is that it's going to ebb and flow, right? We're going through a massive trend right now where everyone's interested in it, and there's going to be successes and failures, and impact investment will go through certain revisions, there'll be measurements, and we'll go through another wave and maybe another, and then finally we'll get to a point where it becomes mainstream. Take a decade or take more.
And Sophie, what do you think as a company or firm goes from like 20% to 50% to 100? What should they think about in terms of change management internally within the firm?
That's a good question. I mean, it's again, if it's a family office like us, that's a discussion they have to have internally. Like, what do they want to achieve through that family office? You know, like any organization, you have to have a goal. So it's good to have your money and make it, you know, grow and become maybe more wealthy. But why are you doing it? And I think starting with a share of your portfolio, part of your portfolio, and putting it into impact investing is good. But then if you can really align to your values and have a 100% portfolio into impact, I think that's wonderful. And I think more and more family offices are actually going to be that way, especially with the new generation. The family office that I'm working with, the average age is 30 years old. So it's all millennials basically. And the new generation after, you know, the older generations made basically the wealth and fortune of the family, and then the new generation take over, and they want to really align their work to their values. So I think there's just going to be a trend that way, and it's just a discussion to have internally.
Great. Let's now look on the next question. What do you think is the primary ESG investment issue? So it's the criteria, but it's closely followed by the top quartile returns. Do you think that really is there's a playoff there between have I got the right criteria, and can I still make money while having a criteria? Theon, what do you think on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think per our earlier conversation, if the returns aren't there, I don't think that the trend will continue. I think it just won't get the wind at its back or the scale that it needs. I agree with Kunal that I think that eventually, if this all plays out the way I think that we all believe, there won't be a term for impact. It'll just be, the returns will be so good. It will just be part of what everyone thinks. And then just in terms of, just to comment on, related to this question, creating the ESG criteria, and as folks are evolving from, some percentage of your portfolio being ESG to, if you aspirationally get to all of it, there are things that you can do that, we have done, as I mentioned, that, we have our one specific pool of capital, but we have ESG weaved into our due diligence and operational due diligence process, just as a matter of course for every investment. And then as another example, we have put a couple years ago ESG considerations as one of the sections of our investment memos that we use to discuss investments. So similar to how you wouldn't make an investment in a company without the financials, and you wouldn't make a commitment to a fund without that manager's prior track record, we won't make an investment in a company across our entire platform without that ESG section of the memo. So that, one company I'm thinking of had 10-to-1 voting rights for the founder. And so it's not prescriptive in terms of what's supposed to be in that field, but again, every situation is different. We talk about the diversity of the management team in there as well. So that's something that you can do as you're migrating from some piece of your portfolio having ESG to 100%. And so I think that's important, but it's something you don't have to just do for that sliver of your portfolio. Okay,
thank you. And the next question is, what industry category do you think is going to provide the highest return? Looking at what Caroline, you put, there's one we have missing here. We could have added health and wellness, but since we didn't, it looks at environmental by far exceeds. Do you think that to the point of not having health and wellness, if we had it, do you think that would have is that a new category, or do you think that health and wellness typically exist outside ESG? Kunal, what do you think?
Ian, I'm sorry, you cut off there. Are you asking if? Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so we have the leading industry category, which, according to folks in the audience, considered to be the one with the highest return is environmental. But I'm noticing that when Caroline did her overview of how First Republic sees ESG, they added health and wellness. And I was thinking, looking at this, is that since we didn't include health and wellness, I wonder if we had included it, it would make any difference. Or do you see health and wellness being a totally separate category to ESG, and ESG is just environmental, societal, and governance?
Yeah, I think there's a reason impact investment has become a term as opposed to ESG investment, because ESG traditionally was defined as environmental, social, and governance. And if you look at impact investment today, it doesn't stop there. It goes on beyond it. Because of course, the environment benefits mankind, society benefits mankind, governance is to help companies succeed, but you're going over the fundamental return on humanity concept, which is missing in the ESG, which is where you put health and wellness, you put food and agriculture, and a lot of other factors that I guess people wouldn't see as part of ESG today.
Mm-hmm. And Sophie, what do you think on the environmental one? What are some of the, within that category, what do you see as some of the leading components within environmental that you are seeing the most growth?
Interestingly enough, I've seen a lot of micro-mobility these past few years, I would say 2-3 years. And I think with the situation we're in today, managing cities and making sure that people can get to one point to another without being, in a crowded space. So mobility per se is going to be an important part. So it's part health, but also part, I would say, environment and just like organization of the city as well. That's one thing that I've seen a lot. Obviously, energy and reducing energy waste has been a big one as well. Yeah, I would say, and anything related to food, obviously, again, in terms of waste and pollution.
Right. And the final question before we go to the audience Q&A is that how do you add diversity into your family office organization? Maybe since we're talking to you, Sophie, why don't you take this one? So investing in diverse founders. Do you have any stats you can share on the sort of profile of the founders you've invested in that would back up this?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, within the team, just as a side note, but I mean, 4 years ago, we didn't have any women. And so right now we're like 3 women against 3 men. So, ka-ching. And then looking at the founders, obviously there's, because the team is so balanced right now, obviously with my women counterparts, we would look at more, women and trying to find, I'm obviously not from the US and we're trying to find people that come from different backgrounds. So that's something that we bring to the table with our own personal experience as well. So it hasn't really been structured in the way that we look at people, but because we're very much founder focused, that's part of the criteria that we have. But yeah, I think diversity is going to be a big one in the next few years.
Well, very good. Well, let's now move to the final 10 minutes here is on some of the questions. And Manu, should we look at the chat? Is that the best way to do that? Manu, is that your suggestion?
There's a Q&A feature. Sandy and Carlos have questions. For Sandy, she says, what are the best practices for impact investing criteria? Are there firms that already do this really well? What resources do you suggest where we can learn more about different approaches and frameworks?
So how about Kunal? Do you want to take the first crack at that and then stay on?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a 3-part question. What are the best practices for impact investment criteria? I think it just goes back to what I initially mentioned, which is, impact measurement is important, but I wouldn't spend too much time trying to figure out the exact solar future potential of the opportunity. Look at the mission and sort of have the right intention and the right output is aligned. There are firms that do this really well. There are firms that do it really well. There are firms that don't do it really well. And I think if you want to really look at who does it well, you should wait patiently for 5 more years, because it's not just about investing in the impact. It's also about looking at what the financial returns are. To me, both of them together define impact investment. And then what resources do you suggest we can learn more about different approaches and frameworks? If you look at, I'm assuming you're referencing, impact measurement here, but if you look at Tideline or Bridgespan and some of the other consultants, they've done reports for a lot of different investors. Go to their website and see some of the sample reports, and you'll get an idea of the different kinds of frameworks that exist out there.
Great.
I would add maybe in terms of resources, just something that's been my Bible for the past few years. There's a, and I can share the link in one way or another. There's a book that's been written by a company called Big Investing in the UK, and it's called The Good Analysts. And it's basically how do you create your own impact criteria. And that's been very useful to me throughout my career. And it's still relevant today. I think now maybe the book is 7-8 years old, but it's still very much relevant.
Yeah, can you share that in the chat maybe so that folks can take a look? Great, thank you.
And I just wanted to add one comment to Kunal's thoughts, which I wholeheartedly agree with, in that there are, in terms of just impact investment criteria, I think we tend to think about impact in terms of the product or service that the company is selling or providing. But there is a strong argument to be made that even in a company that is at the end of the day maybe making shoes, that the supply chain, the input materials, the price transparency, et cetera, that those are also impactful in terms of job creation, et cetera, and that again the criteria could be different, and not just both measured or in terms of the operations of the company and how they run their business, in addition to, or equally as important perhaps, as what the business actually does.
Great, thank you. And then the next one I can see from Carlos. So on the governance aspect, how do you get involved with the projects that you fund, and what do you hope to bring to the table? Okay, so on the governance aspect, okay, where we have Sophie take a first crack at that one.
Sure. I mean, the one thing that we do is, because I mean, again, since I'm focusing on the very early stage investment, most of the companies that we look into, they've been focusing on having, their prototype or like first product ready and kind of going onto market. And so we try, when they get into the portfolio, to help them really structure the company. And so even talking about, building a culture, internal culture, and talking about diversity earlier, we try and make sure that they have, all these systems in place. So as investors, if you have, the time and the resources to do that, that's a good way to bring added value to the table, is really helping on the kind of operations and execution side of things.
Now, does anyone here have any expertise in alternative protein? Because that's a question I can see here. So views on alternative protein as part of impact investing mix. Does anyone know what that means?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what view Simon's trying to go for, but yeah, absolutely. I think I think alternative protein is a huge environmental impact, especially given the way in which the human population is increasing. If you want to support life on Earth, it is the right way to go about it. So I'm definitely along on the side. Excellent.
And are the companies that you've seen in that space that have interested you, or is it a space you're looking to find someone?
Yeah, we've looked at everything from Memphis meats to the whole genre of the spectrum. I think what we're patiently waiting and viewing was what are the side effects of alternative proteins, and we weren't fully comfortable with the answers there, which is why we've sort of shied away from the space. But as more time passes, we're getting more and more comfortable.
Great. Next one. Thank you. What are the most popular carbon sequestering companies you're excited about? Anyone have experience in the carbon space? Is that you? I think Canard, I remember seeing there's do you guys have some experience there?
Yes, we've also had experience in this, in the sense that we looked at a number of carbon capture technologies. We've looked at natural, artificial ways of doing it. Seaweed actually is very efficient in terms of capturing carbon dioxide, just carbon dioxide emitted out there in the atmosphere. The question is, how important is permanence and oversight?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I fully get the question, but if the question is what is a VC's role in oversight of the company, pretty important, because I'm assuming this is an early stage company, and we would probably have a board seat to make sure that the entrepreneur has the right advice, the equipment, the mentorship to succeed.
Right. And then a final question here, we have one from so to you directly to Sophie, is really about fees and structures. What is the if you can share what are some of the approaches when you're creating the ESG funds? Is any difference in how you structure the investments, and is that something that you at all consider? Or is it a straightforward standard vehicle that you would use for any other type of investment?
Yeah, well, again, as a family office, we have our own basically way of investing, which is basically direct into a company and getting equity. The zero fee part of it comes from a company that I started a couple of years ago. It was a multi-family office where we would work with clients and not ask any of the management fees that usually family offices ask for, which is the 1% under management usually. And so we just had a different model, and that's where the zero fees came from. And we were betting on getting, selecting and investing in companies that would do really well, especially in the impact investing field, which has been the case. And for that, we created specific vehicles for our clients, meaning we would have either small SPVs or micro funds per client and per industries. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Okay, and one final question as we close out here. Maybe go down the row here. So maybe each one of you can answer. How do you see this industry in 12 months? Do you see it having even more investment dollars moving into it, or do you see that changes in terms of what investment is? Do you think it's going to be more of a healthcare is going to be added into it more? I'd love to get everyone's thoughts. So
I definitely think you're going to see a lot of dollars moving towards what are considered ESG areas. I think given, I think there's a lot more focus on social justice, and there are investment areas that that are related to that, including financial inclusion, education, worker retraining, and then I think the healthcare is somewhat evident in terms of just both on the life sciences side in terms of development, but also in terms of monitoring and the way that we're going to access healthcare. It has clearly changed considerably with telemedicine, et cetera, with us all being at home. But I think that is going to continue. So we've pulled forward demand. I don't think it's a temporary blip. And so I think a lot of these areas are going to get a lot more focus. And then on the east side, in terms of environmental, for sure, there's the, forget about COVID and just, the wildfires and the weather situation that we've had. I think there's just a lot more attention on all of these factors. So I would imagine there'd be a lot more capital flowing to solve these big challenges.
Great, thank you. Sophie, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I see it going mainstream in the next 12 months. I do see more of impact investing going local rather than global. I think that was kind of the first wave, or maybe first and second waves. And then now more and more, maybe because of COVID, but I do see more of the local type of investments, which is, just looking at your community. And say, and you mentioned, the wildfire, and just us as investors being based also in San Francisco, you're looking more into, what can I do for California if I'm calling myself impact investor? So I think there's that. And then the second trend that I see is definitely the Gen Z, pushing as customers, investors, voters, just pushing for more impact investing and impact generally speaking. Which I'm very excited about. Like, as a millennial, I thought we were the generation to push impact, but I think the Gen Z is going to take over.
And then Kunal, finally from your perspective.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with what everyone said here. I mean, we're anticipating with 38 million wealth transfer from to the millennials in the next 2 to 3 decades, and millennials are pretty passionate about impact investment, so there's going to be a demand for it. I think you're going to see lots of winners and losers, just like the dot-com bubble burst. There is going to be a point where there is a cleaning up, where people who have not been invested correctly will have to be held accountable for it. And then lastly, I will continue to see impact measurement being refined to a point where, just like we measure risk in the public market with beta, there's going to be a metric to measure impact a companies generate.
Well, very good. I noticed some other questions still coming in, but I think we're coming to the end of our time here. So I'd like to, first of all, thank the panelists for your time. Really appreciate it. Some great insights here. And also thank the sponsors again. Thank you, Caroline, First Republic, and the folks at Runway. So everyone, thank you so much. And what we'll be doing after this event, we'll be creating a report and we'll be sharing both a report and a recording of this. So stay tuned, and you'll be getting that information the next couple of weeks. Thank you, everyone, for the rest of the day. Bye-bye.